Holy crap, it's finally time for us to take a look back at Battalion Wars 2. Besides Battle for Bikini Bottom, the only game that's ever been requested. Which is weird because I promised I would do it in the first place at the end of the Battalion Wars video, but hey, whatever. So naturally, this video will play the role of a sequel to the original. At points, I'll have to reference the first one, so if you haven't seen it already, I recommend that you do. Don't worry if you haven't though, just like any other video, I'll make sure that I explain every aspect of the game thoroughly before critiquing it. So I'm gonna be a little brief on the whole part where I give the context of, the time period that the game came out in, because I tend to have trouble keeping those shortened down. So this is all I'm gonna say. Just like Battalion Wars 1, Battalion Wars 2 failed to sell as much as it could have. The difference here though is that the Wii absolutely blew the GameCube out of the water when it came to popularity, so the fact that Battalion Wars 2 didn't do as good as the first one is a little embarrassing. Now, I've always been a sucker for cool instruction booklets, but this one absolutely takes the cake. It's made to look like a basic field manual and does a job of teaching all the controls. Also, this main menu, at first it seems like just any regular old main menu, but once you realize that you can shoot and destroy the little tanks and stuff driving around the world, oh my god, best menu ever. So starting the game, we face immediate disappointment. There is just so much wrong with this tutorial stage that I don't even know where to start. I mean, as far as tutorials go, it's pretty great, it teaches you everything. The coolest thing is that you can access the controls menu anytime, but the controls that you haven't learned yet don't appear and can't be used until you've learned them, which is, like, rock solid. See, the problem is I couldn't capture footage of that because that only happens on your first playthrough, and I had already beaten the game prior to filming this, and I tried to delete my file, but I couldn't get it to work, but trust me, like, this was such a big deal that I noticed it on my first playthrough, so this is a thing that happens. I just can't prove it to you, but you gotta believe me. Good, okay. But I mean, a tutorial level, if you decide to structure your game that way, needs to serve some other purposes too. It needs to set up the story of the game properly, but above all else, excite the player. The first stage should be climactic, fun, and exhilarating, and set the pace for the rest of the game. This, however, in my opinion, fails to do that. I mean, first off, it forces us to play as the Japanese soldiers 200 years ago. Like, no! Whether or not you played the first game, you know that Battalion Wars mascot is the little green American soldier. I mean, look at the box art. The first thing you see in the center is a green tank, the American tank, not the Japanese one off to the side, the American one. And the first thing you see when you open up the game, besides, the instruction booklet and the disc, is a little register your software thing with the green army dude. In the first mission of the game, you should get to play as them, not these guys. I mean, keep in mind that this game came out around the same time as Call of Duty 4. This game had no competition really besides that, so it should have really tried its best to make a good first impression. Anyways, let's take a look at the story. The story of BW2 revolves entirely around this staff. Oh boy. So apparently this staff won the war against Lord Sauron here over 200 years ago because it wields the power of the sun. Well, no, not really. What it really does is it calls down a satellite laser strike. Okay, hold up. Can we talk about this for a minute? None of this technology makes any sense. I mean, this is 200 years ago and the Solar Empire soldiers look the same as they always do. Also, this staff is just stupid. It's not magical, it's something they obviously built. I mean, later on you find out that President Vampire Guy is looking for the staff in the present so that he can conquer the world. Like, why doesn't he just build his own satellite laser weapon? This is the dumbest setup for a satellite laser. Come on! I mean, the staff just shoots a beam straight up and it hits the satellite. That means that the satellite was already positioned directly over the tower. Why couldn't they just fire it remotely? Why is the staff designed to kill its bearer striking right where it stands? And how does any of this exist freaking 200 years ago? Okay, I'm going in circles now, but I think you get the point. None of this tutorial makes any sense, and besides that, it's just plagued with cutscenes, so The game is set up in different campaigns, each one letting you play the part of a different nation, which is cool because in the first game you played as the Americans only, except for a few bonus missions where you got to play as each nation. I feel like for the most part the developers kind of looked at the first game and noticed all the problems with it and said this is what we have to do to make it more fun and make it better. What's cool is that each campaign has a briefing that's fully narrated. The voice actor they got for this fits the theme so well, and I personally like how each briefing ends with a call to action.
Defend the Solar Empire from the Anglo-Isles aggressors. Repel the Tundran invaders. And secure victory for the frontier.
The individual missions also have their own mini briefings too, and the loading screens include basic mission objectives as well as tips that might come in handy for the level ahead. Even once each mission begins, the commander will brief you one last time. I never felt once like I wasn't sure what I had to do on a mission, which is good. While some might feel that the game is oversaturated with briefings, I think it's handled better than the first game where each mission had a block of unnarrated text and then a short briefing before it started. The first campaign is, well, you guessed it, Solar Empire. Again, absolute worst decision ever. When you think of modern war, do you think of Japan? No! Nobody does! They don't even have an army! The game was clearly being targeted at a Western audience as it was released here first, which is exceptionally rare for a video game, and was developed in England. So why all the focus on Japan? Beats me. I mean, in contrast to the first game, whose first missions involved battles on bridges and epic car chases between the Americans and Russians, this game's introduction just fails to impress. Also, this commander, Akira, has the most annoying voice I have ever heard.
Well done, Commander! We are victorious! These islands are in the hands of their rightful owners once again!
Accept those charges, munitions expert!
You use your recon to clear out the enemy so the munitions expert can set his charges. Set those charges! Go, munitions experts!
What sucks even more is that you get to see the American soldiers and commanders a few points because they're your allies. By the way, I think something happened to Brigadier Betty.
Glad we got posted to the...
Oh, I think she might have got that surgery where they turn you into a complete different person and change your voice. I really honestly didn't think they could exploit her any more than they already did in the first game. Anyways, Japan's being attacked by the British, who are like so incredibly British it's crazy.
Anglo military intelligence is second to none.
Just sucks because every other nation seems so cool and quirky and charming, while you're stuck playing as, in my opinion, the most purposeless, aggravating, and offensive nation in the game. Oh look, Easter Island heads. Okay, so let's talk about some improved stuff now. In the first game, due to the lack of a second joystick to control aiming, ground controls were very tank-like and guns were always pointed tangent to whatever surface you were walking on, with the exception of when you entered crouched R targeting, or when you were locked onto an enemy. Soldiers in Battalion Wars 2 control much more realistically. The nunchuck joystick is used to control movement, while the Wii Remote pointer serves the role of a second joystick. This means that you can be aiming and moving in any direction without having to lock on. The use of motion control is very fluid. For example, combat rolls. To do a combat roll, just strafe in the direction you want to roll and then twist the nunchuck. It feels really cool to dodge bullets like this just by twisting back and forth. Similarly, thrusting the nunchuck up is how you jump. The fact that you actually have to take aim yourself and pull the trigger on the Wii Remote to fire really feels cool. Navigating the map to spot out enemy placements with the Wii Remote feels really good too. While we're at it, let's talk about how different classes of vehicles controlled. Land vehicles are the only ones that don't feel so great to me. The problem is that they control exactly like foot soldiers. Use the nunchuck to move and the Wii Remote to aim. However, now, the Wiimote is also used to steer. It's hard to explain, it just doesn't feel right steering a vehicle by pointing left and right. It's most notable in the quick moving recons. You eventually will get the hang of it, but it doesn't feel great. Helicopter controls have greatly benefited from the use of the Wii Remote. In the previous game, I discussed how the altitude changing for helicopters used the same joystick as for movement. And using the R button to adjust your altitude means that you can't be changing heights and moving forwards or backwards at the same time. This is how you move forward, but this is how you adjust altitude. So a player could either be hovering at a steady height or moving up and down, but not both at the same time like a real helicopter. But now, altitude is adjusted by simply pointing the Wii Remote up or down. The added maneuverability allows the helicopters to bring a lot more to the table. The plane controls are my absolute favorites. The plane's direction is controlled exclusively with the Wii Remote. Adjusting altitude is the same as for helicopters, simply pointing up or down. But turning is done by twisting the Wii Remote left or right as if you're actually holding the plane in your hand. It's just such a cool feeling to twist your hand and watch the plane on screen do the same movements. The nunchuck also serves a purpose in plane controls. To adjust the speed of the aircraft, you push the joystick up or down. To initiate a barrel roll, you twist the nunchuck left or right. Finally, naval units. Yes, Battalion War 2's greatest upgrade, naval combat. These all control exactly like land vehicles, except because of their reduced speed, they're a lot easier to handle. Submarines are the most interesting. By thrusting the nunchuck, you can submerge and hide from some enemy vessels. There is a little bit of a problem with the naval combat, but I'll discuss that later. A few other basic controls were improved also. For example, the lock-on. Now in the first game, the lock-on was great. The way it worked was that once the target you were locked onto was destroyed, it would automatically choose the next target to lock onto, giving you a little circle indicating which one would be next. Sometimes though it would choose the wrong one, but I mean this was something we were used to in video games. It was such a minor issue that I didn't even mention it in the last video, but they did find a way to make it work better on the Wii. So while locking onto an enemy, the reticle will stay in the center of the screen as you fire, but notice that you have a sort of sub-reticle attached to the main reticle that you can control with the pointer. By positioning this sub-reticle over the next enemy you wish to engage, your soldier will automatically lock onto that one once they're done with the one that they're currently fighting. It feels really cool to swing between targets like that. Also, the command controls have been improved. In the first bar, I mentioned how the command bar retracts automatically if you leave it idle too long, and because of this you could accidentally send orders to your entire army when you meant to send it to just one unit. In the sequel, the bar never retracts. While it seems to get in the way sometimes, at least it doesn't lead to any unwanted orders being sent. Now I know that if I fail, it's my fault. As a plus, there doesn't seem to be any mission in which ordering individual units is required. As such, the go command has been removed. The only commands left in the game are follow, stay, and attack. What's probably the single greatest improvement, however, is in terms of AI. In the first game, the AI would have been laughable if the stakes weren't just so high. Like I said, despite the game's demand for strategy, the quality of the AI forced you to play more of a blitz strategy sometimes. I noted how bad it was, especially for enemy helicopters, because your anti-air units don't attack on their own. For each and every single enemy air unit, whether helicopter or bomber or jet, you would have to go out of your way to aim at it and order your guys to take it out. In Battalion Wars 2, however, your AI comrades have really stepped up their game. When following or staying, they will attack any enemy units that get in their way, even air units. They also rarely get in your way as they used to. In recording footage for this, I only found one situation where one of my friendly units got stuck somewhere and couldn't follow me, which, if you remember all the crap I had to deal with in the first video, is a great improvement. The best part is that they don't attack them like morons anymore. So look, this is the way rocket launchers work. You can hold down the B button to charge it and fire multiple rockets at once instead of just one. I think if you charge it all the way, it fires like 6 or something. The charge takes about 4 to 5 seconds to complete though. In the first game, when you told your rocket guys to attack an enemy helicopter, they would all sit there and start charging their rockets, and then fire a whole horde of missiles all at once. I mean, look at the time it takes between everyone else starting to engage this helicopter till the anti-air guys finally engage it. This was pointless though. Let's say a helicopter can take about 10 shots before going down. If I have 5 rocket guys, what's the point in waiting 4 seconds undefended while they all charge their rockets, if half of their rockets aren't even going to be needed? I mean, they can each just take 2 single shots and blow it out of the sky as soon as possible, and limit any casualties I'll have to take. In Battalion Wars 2 though, while I can't prove it, based on what I've seen while playing, it looks to me like friendly AI will either attack in an organized manner like that, or that while not attacking, they constantly keep a charge on standby until you demand it of them. Either way, they take out enemy air units quickly and without me having to tell them to all the time. And that's what impresses me the most. Also, while ground artillery units are extremely hard to pilot manually, since they're the only vehicle whose turret can't move independently of its body, the advanced AI makes it easy to command it regardless and take out targets from a distance. It's really cool to sit back and just be like, you, hit that, and then that's just I don't know, I like that stuff. Now let's talk about missions themselves. Missions in Battalion Wars 2 all seem to have a much larger scale than those in its predecessor. Battalion Wars stages were more of a WYSIWYG. The units you got at the beginning were all you were gonna get, so you had to use them wisely. Half the game was spent trying to preserve those vital rocket guys. I mentioned in the video that the game seemed to cry out for some sort of respawning method, and I asked specifically for something similar to Star Wars Battlefront's control points. But yeah, in case you don't remember, I wrote the script for the previous video before playing the sequel, so I actually had no idea what I was in store for. While I didn't exactly get that, it came close enough. Almost every one of Battalion War 2's missions offers you some non-mandatory way to gain reinforcements. Most of them are all secondary objectives, pointed out by silver stars. They're not required to complete the mission like the gold stars are, but they stand there as a way to build back up some troops that you may have lost. Some stages feature helipads. Capturing one of these helipads will allow a transport chopper to land and give you some troops. This can only be done once though. Similarly, POW camps are sometimes spread around and can be raided to rescue troops and add them to your ranks. What's nice though is that these single-use sort of reinforcements are more often than not met with a counterattack by the enemy. For example, after rescuing some prisoners, the enemy will launch an attack on you directly, an attack that they wouldn't have orchestrated if you hadn't rescued those prisoners. The other method for building up numbers is by capturing bases. Some bases throughout the game allow the player to spawn specific units. For example, barracks will spawn foot soldiers, or an airbase will spawn planes and choppers. Sometimes these bases are given to the player at the start of a mission as an objective to protect, and other times they appear as secondary objectives for the player to consider capturing. In this case, the enemy already owns the base and is benefiting from its spawn ability. To capture it, the player has to make it past the automated defenses and capture a flag while also fending off the still spawning enemies. These can prove to be extremely challenging at times, especially considering the fact that the enemy will try to capture it back from you, but often the reward is well worth the risk. The bases are the reason a new command was added to the game. Defend. By ordering them to defend a flag, your entire battalion will take defensive positions, like hiding behind sandbags or manning turrets, and defend against any oncoming attackers. Your units will also raise the flag back up if the enemy managed to pull it down a little. My favorite use of the new spawning feature is in one of the Western Frontier missions. Also, while we're here, let me just justify my love-hate relationship with this game. As you know by this point, the Western Frontier is the mascot of this game. However, out of the whole game, who has the shortest campaign? The Western Frontier, sporting only 3 missions! So there's the hate, but you know what the love is? The Western Frontier missions are the best in the game! The mission is to storm a big Russian base, but along the way there are a ton of smaller bases that can be captured to gain reinforcements. At the beginning you started off with a pretty small unit, but by the time you're ready to storm the multi-layered defenses of the base, you formed a formidable army. Another thing that characterized Battalion Wars was its difficulty. However, in the video I attributed a lot of its challenging elements to the bad AI and poor command controls. So seeing as how these issues have been dealt with, the logical assumption is that Battalion Wars 2 should be a lot easier, yes? Well, yeah. For the most part, Battalion Wars 2 is much easier. In contrast, while recording footage for this video, I only failed 2 missions, whereas for the previous video, I had to replay almost every mission, some still failing on the second try. The game is extremely easy, but it makes up for it by being tough on scoring. For every mission, you're rated on 3 competencies. Power, the amount of enemies destroyed, technique, the amount of your soldiers who survived, and speed, the completion time. Getting an A or S rank on some of these is pretty tough. Getting good ranks unlocks concept art and unit information. The Western Frontier is just the best. I love this light tank. I find it very saddening that there is never a point in the single-player campaign in which you get to pilot the light tank. That's just no fun. The Russian vehicles are all still tractor-based, which is just so cool. Oh hey look, I was right! Those things on their backs are supposed to be Sputnik. The Anglos are pretty funny too. Look, their flamethrowers are bagpipes. The Anglo campaign is a lot of fun. It focuses both on naval and aerial combat. Like, check this part out. You go through this whole mission and eventually you get fighter jets and battleships. You have to use the battleships to attack this fort while the planes provide cover from the helicopters that can take out the boats. It feels really cool to fly around and provide cover fire. Or this one, where you have to defend a dock base using battleships, subs, and frigates to destroy naval and air transport units before they can drop off their troops on the beach. I can't get over how British these guys are though. Like, one of your air bases is called the Heath Air Base.
Big Clapstead Heath Air Base.
And at one point you have to defend the Jubilee Bridge. Yo, just look at these fields of grass and these houses. One of the funniest missions is where the Solar Empire graffitis a statue of Colonel Windsor. So he sends out a cleanup crew who you have to defend from the sky with a pair of bombers. I like the final one too because of how controlling air support from the ground can really change the flow of a fight and give you the upper hand in a tough spot. It's okay though because they balance it out by putting a lot of anti-air units around. Oh hey look! President Vampire kills Akira.
Poison! Treachery!
I have never been happier! So there is one problem with naval combat. The thing is that battleship turrets are a lot like artillery turrets. They're made to fire from a long ways away. The problem is that while some targets are stationary, some targets are other boats and you want to navigate around them as you're shooting. The thing is though that the turret can't move more than 180 degrees around, because if it moves more, it starts clipping through the boat. So if you're aiming at a target and eventually your turret starts hitting the side of the boat, suddenly your boat will just stall in the middle of the ocean and start moving backwards, which feels really, really not good thing. A boat should not be behaving like this. I mean, don't tell me it's to be realistic. This is Battalion Wars. We're trying to have fun. Anyways, that's all I gotta say. After this, Vlad rescues Ubel the Governator from a Russian gulag, and the whole plot is revealed. Vlad made up the rumors about the super weapon that made the whole world go to war.
You better be right about this super weapon.
The Tundrans were convinced that the Frontier was building some kind of super weapon at Fort 51, weren't they?
So that in the confusion, he could search for the staff. Oh yeah, I should probably mention that's why everyone was fighting in the first place. You get another flashback to the war 200 years ago. This time though, you get to play as the bad guys, the Exylvanian vampire people. I still don't get it, but whatever. What grates my nerves is that the Exylvanians look different and use much more primitive technology than they do in the present, but not the Japanese. Like, why? Honestly though, I'm cool with it, because this whole section is clearly and unsubtly inspired by Lord of the Rings. I mean, these guys straight up look like orcs, and well, I've already compared Lord Farrock here to Sauron. Oh, and hey, check out the Iron Tower. At this point, I've gotten over how little sense this makes because it's just plain cool. Fighting these clean, white-colored, futuristic soldiers with these dirty, grungy, steampunkish vampire goblin army. It feels a lot like elves versus orcs. I like the mission where you have to defend the prototype battle station tank. The enemy tries so desperately to destroy it before it's finished, but once it's complete, you use it to wreak havoc all over the enemy and destroy their charging stations. I love how the battle station's wheels sound like a castle gate opening. The last one is cool too, where you have to make your way to the quad cannons and defend them from the enemy coming up the beach while using whatever soldiers you have left. The last campaign is the Russian one, which, hey, I don't think they could have come up with a better choice. At this point, everyone's caught on to Kaiser Vlad's plan, and they know that he's searching for the staff in the tundra. Some of the missions are pretty cool, like the one where the enemy is trying to destroy President Bad Russian Guy from Rocky IV's father's tomb, and you have to defend it. Or another one where you get to command the strongest naval vessel, the Dreadnought, and take out a whole naval fleet. One of my favorites is the one where they give you a small ground force and tell you to destroy some radar array or something. It's really cool commanding your units from a tractor tank as you go through the ruins of this Russian village, fighting off everyone in your way. Another cool one is where you have to destroy Station X. First off, you have to take out all the AA towers so that you can call in the bombers. Once they're in, you can destroy the concrete wall leading to Station X. There's more anti-air units around there, so you gotta send your troops in again. At one point they send battleships out at you, and it's cool to just watch from a safe distance as you command your bomber to take them out.
Precision strike, Commander. You have sunk a battleship.
Attacking the station itself is really cool, because you're there on the ground shooting at it with everyone you got, and your bombers flying around bombing into Kingdom Come. It has a really cinematic feel. Finally, the last mission in the game, and definitely the most original, allows you to take control of units from all the different allied nations to destroy Vlad's mining spider. You start off with a single Russian battle station and a couple of anti-air vets. They tell you from the get-go that the battle station is the only weapon that can damage the spider, so keeping it alive is the highest priority. Along the way, there's countless enemy battle stations and gunships. Eventually, you meet up with some American allied tanks, who didn't last me so long. I managed to get some Russian choppers, who are very useful to use to scout the area ahead. Up ahead, you meet up with some more American tanks and rescue 2 Japanese anti-air vehicles from a POW camp. Or one. One works too, I guess. Jeez, those battle station rounds just cut through them like butter. Eventually, you get to this big open clearing with a mining spider surrounded by a shield in the middle. All sorts of enemy units as support. Tanks, battle stations, ground soldiers, jets, and gunships, the works. After destroying the shield generators, the enemy flies in some Strato destroyers, the strongest air units. Luckily enough, the Brits show up with a few fighters to command. At this point, the spider starts shooting off these laser things and goes crazy. You got the battle station shooting at this, being shot at by lasers, fighters providing air support, bombs dropping from the sky, tanks left, right, and center, frame rate drops, everything you could ask for in a final boss. At the end, Betty's rescued by the handsome Commander Pierce, of course, and something blows up or whatever. The Exylvanians are revealed to still be alive, setting the series up for a 3rd entry. One that has not happened yet.
The torch of destiny still burns brightly for Exylvania.
All in all, Battalion Wars 2 is a great game for the Wii. Keeping in mind all the problems in the original game, the second one did a great job of fixing them. And also fixing problems that I didn't even know could be fixed. Like the lock-on thing, you basically couldn't do that without motion controls. I mean, the use of motion controls for just general controlling is spot on. So the game is very intuitive in that. Now, there was an online component to the game. And unfortunately, because online support for these Nintendo games has been shut down now, and I didn't have it prior to making the Conduit video, which was the last one I was able to make while the online was still running, I wasn't able to play it at all. But I did hear pretty great things about it, and you can watch some footage on it online. I recommend that you do, because from what I can tell, it seemed really fun. I think it's a really cool idea to pitch 2 players against each other like that. Give them both an army and manual control of units, and let them fight each other and see what happens. And give them objectives to complete or whatever. I mean, if you're a mainstream gamer, you probably know the Call of Duty Black Ops 2 tried to do something like that. They had these weird side missions where you were able to control all your units and also take manual control of them, but I don't think it was handled as well as Battalion Wars 2 was. I mean, obviously it wasn't in Battalion Wars, that's the main feature of the game, but I think this is a concept that has a lot of potential, and I'd really like to see it happen more often. And I guess as tradition is with all these videos, I guess this is the part where I say I would love to see a sequel of this on the Wii U, because I just always say that. Always. I don't know why I always say that, but I think that, you know what, this has what it does. Think about it. Think about how much potential this would have. Like, if I had to pinpoint a single problem with this game at this point on this console, it would be that when there's too much stuff going on, you can't control your units. And no matter how much control we give you, with a controller, it's never going to be possible to place units yourself. And the only thing I'm going to say is that with a second screen interface, especially the way the gamepad is set up with, manual controls on it, it would be extremely easy to switch between action and commanding with the touch of a screen. Haha! Playing this game about a staff that shoots a laser at a satellite that shoots another laser and blows everything up 200 years in the past kinda gets me in the mood to develop my own weapon that makes no technological sense whatsoever. Hello, I just closed my camera up and I realized I forgot to make my end screen, because what is a video like this without my classic standard 5-minute end screen? So there is actually something I want to talk about in this video that I did talk about in the last end screen, but I cut it out because it made my end screen 7 minutes long and I was like, no, we're not going to have any of that happening. Nope. So what I want to talk about is criticism. Oh wait, I gotta fix the camera so that you can see that. Always see the stack of games. That's the rule. That's the rule for these. But just don't forget about Gex. Never forget Gex. What I want to talk about is how I will respond to criticism. Now, depending on what people say, I will always try to respond to this. So if you tell me something that I haven't noticed that I don't think is a problem, and you tell me that it might be a problem, I'll look into it and I'll consider it and I'll think, okay, maybe I'm doing something stupid, because this happened before, obviously. I do a lot of stupid things. I'll take that to heart and I'll, respond and I'll say, you're right, that's a stupid thing that I did and I apologize for it and I will not do that anymore and I will do something else and I'll discuss my solution for fixing the problem. However, in the case that someone tells me something that I can't change, I will respond to it and explain why this is the way it is. So a few videos ago, I was criticized for making too many cuts, which obviously you're watching the end screen and it's just cutting left, right, and center. So yeah, I do a lot of cuts. In my end screen, my cuts are a lot looser because I just don't care about the end screen. But anyway, this is gonna be one of those, I'm sorry that this is the way it is because I can't, this is why I explained to you. But in particular, a comment was asking why I couldn't memorize multiple sentences at a time, which, let me have you know, I do. But let me explain this to you. This is my script. Can you even see from there? No, it just looks like fuzz because that's how small the font is. Okay, so imagine this, and this, and this one is 6 pages. This one, well, 6 and a little bit, but I always give myself room because especially for this script did not go over so well because I wrote it very late at night and I put footnotes all over it and then I forgot about them and I put like a note like talk about this and then I would forget to talk about that and then I have to like improvise live here. So this one is 6 pages. On average my scripts are 6 pages. Last one was 7 pages, was the most I've ever done. And the problem is that my sentences are really long and I'm saying a lot of things in them because at the end of the day my top priority is to say as much as I can. I mean, these are look backs. I don't want to ever have to pick up this game and say, oh, I forgot to mention this thing. Like I'm laying it down on the table and I'm saying everything I have to say. I'm saying everything that I think has to be said about this game, which is a lot of stuff. So it gets to the point that I have to cut out a lot of things. Like sometimes I'll cut out entire points I try to make. Now I'm gonna try to not, okay, this is improv, so this is different than if I were reading the script or if I had, memorized a few lines and I'm just reading them right now, but I'm just gonna, speak, off the top of my head, and I'm gonna show you how people naturally speak. Because when you speak, there's a lot of breaths, and there's a lot of points where sometimes you stop and you think about what the word is you're trying to say, or you just stop because, this is the way human beings speak. There's a flow to it. But in my video presentation, I don't want there to be that sort of flow. If I pause at points for, dramatic effect, it's like, great, okay, whatever, but I can cut that out, and you won't notice if I cut it out. Well, I mean, you will notice, but it doesn't make a difference. It's not like, whoa, I don't know what he's saying now. It's just like, okay, great. If I can get information to you faster than I can normally speaking, then I will do that. And if I pause for any longer, like right there, that was that pause right there, that to me, because I'm like a super quality freak, that would annoy me, and I would sit there and I would cut literally like 5 frames out of the video just so I have voice, no pause, voice, and you don't have to wait and hear nothing, because apparently now my videos are each 25 minutes long. For a 25-minute video, just rough assumption, if I sat there and I cut out all the breaths, all just the inhalations I make, not the points where I sit there and I'm thinking, or I forget something, or I fumble something, or whatever, like just the breathing, I'm pretty sure I could make at least 1 minute to 2 minutes worth of just breathing. So that's where the majority of my cuts go. I'm cutting out breaths. Some of the other cuts come from other things. Like sometimes I'll read off a line and I'll, whatever, it's done. But then when I'm looking at the footage and I'm editing the video, I hear something and like I slurred my word and it just doesn't sound right and I totally messed it up. So sometimes I do little cuts to fix the words I'm trying to say, which happens maybe 1 to 2 times every video. And honestly, this is just my style. I do a lot of cuts. I like doing cuts. If I can turn what would be a 30 to 35 minute video into a 20 to 25 minute video just by cutting out breaths and cutting out stupid thoughts and cutting out this and that and trying not to leave too much empty space, then I'm gonna do that. And also, in case you haven't noticed, I speak really fast for some of these. So if it annoys you, I'm really, really sorry, but I hope that you can understand that this is why I do it this way. And I have no plans of ever changing that. And also, I don't do this full time. I don't have time to, perfect it and make sure everything's perfect. I'm gonna be going back to school soon. I don't have that much time. This is probably the last video I'm gonna make all summer. So if I gotta film it this day and I have a cold or I have stitches like last time, or I have this or I have that, I gotta deal with it and I gotta get it done. Because like I said, my top priority is saying as much as I can as fast as I can. But I do thank you for the criticism, and that's all I'm gonna say, I guess. Yes. Oh wait, I have to make a Battalion Wars joke as I walk away. I just realized that like Reggie Obama, black guy on the Americans, was gone from the whole game. He's not even in it. Did I not even say that? Oh my god. And the big Russian woman, she's not there either. In the name of Tsar Gorky's ghost, attack!